Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Once Upon a Time. So, pretty much directly picking up where season 5 left off, we have Hyde in town, but he's also brought in other people from, the Land of Untold Stories. We still haven't gotten a clear picture of who it is he brought here. We've seen some faces from the side, but no one, no clear directive, oh, this is so-and-so and that's so-and-so. But it's not clear whether everyone he brought there were heroes or villains. Because my understanding of it, it seems like kind of what they were talking about in this episode. It seems like people ran away from their particular world because they were scared of their stories playing out. That's the main reason why they left their homes and went to that world, because they don't have to worry about their stories there. They can just live. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting perspective. But I guess it's like, if your story has a very messed up or sad ending, or it plays out a certain way, maybe you wouldn't be so willing to play it out that way. I mean, because it makes you wonder, the people that are there in the Land of Untold Stories, do they actually know, do they know that they exist, within a storybook type of situation? Because everyone that's from the Enchanted Forest had no idea until they came to this world, and it's like, oh, Henry's got a book with all this in it. Or obviously we know about the author and all that now, just because I say Arthur a weird way. I say it like that sometimes, so I have to correct myself. Author. But because they know that exists in everything, so it's kind of like, okay, someone kind of records our lives. So I'm going too deeply into that. My question is, I'm curious as to what Hyde wants. Is he, trying to have his own story? Because for the longest time, his story has always been tied with Dr. Jekyll. So maybe Hyde wants kind of his own story. Maybe he wants to have his own place. Maybe in his mind, he's like, I'm going to create a world where everyone has their complete stories. Because I'm making it seem like everyone that's in the Land of Untold Stories is there maybe 100% on purpose. Maybe some of them just kind of crash landed there and they just could never find a way back to the world, so their stories are always left untold. So it's probably like some are there on purpose, others are not. Maybe Hyde himself isn't that. Because the way his story plays out is not truth be told, I don't know. I know of the story, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I don't actually know how it actually concludes. So maybe he does know, and maybe that's why he's doing all this, because he wants a world where he can have essentially his happy ever after. Not even just from villains never get their happily ever afters, but particularly people whose stories are incomplete. So maybe he wants to give his story a proper ending. And maybe he chose Storybrooke because he just wants a different world to rule over. I don't know. Maybe in the Land of Untold Stories, there's nothing really to concrete rule over. I don't know. His motives are, this point in time, it's still kind of in the dark. I don't know. That's just me hazarding a guess as to why he's doing that. Maybe it's something completely different. We also had the whole situation with Emma in this episode. She's getting those shakes in her hand. And obviously we have Hyde knowing a little bit more about what's going on with her. And then the Oracle basically telling her what's going on. But essentially being that the visions she's having are basically of the future. And as she dies in that future. And, the Oracle told her, you can change the path. You could, the future is always developing, and things could end up taking a different turn, but ultimately the destination will always be the same. No matter what path you take, it will always end with her dying. That's how her story ends. Because they're making it seem like saviors. We kind of saw it a little bit at the beginning with Aladdin and Jafar, which I'll get to that in a second. But that saviors in the past don't, being the savior is a greater burden than you would kind of think it is, because apparently saviors don't have happy endings. They're the ones who have stories that are just kind of, they always end one way. So we don't really know what became of Aladdin, but that was kind of interesting introduction. And the thing I was going to get to, I was just mentioning before, is wasn't Jafar the main villain of Once Upon a Time in Wonderland? That's what I'm curious about. Or because I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen it, and like I honestly never finished it because I was like, well, I found out it got canceled, so I was like, there's no point in me finishing it, and just because it's like I'm just going to be, I don't know, maybe it actually has a legit proper ending, or maybe it has a cliffhanger ending. I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll go back and finish it, but I don't know. Didn't they have? I don't know the actor's name, but he played Saeed on Lost. He played Jafar. Wasn't that what that who that character was? Like I said, maybe I'm misremembering that wrong, but they've got a different actor playing him. So maybe either that actor was busy, tied up in other projects at the time, and he couldn't reprise the role, or just or there's a pessimist side of my brain that's like, well, maybe it's because Once Upon a Time in Wonderland got canceled, so they're kind of scrapping it like pretend, and that's no longer, there's no continuity to that, which can't be the fact because Will was added to Once Upon a Time, so it's kind of like no, it has to be like okay, the actor just didn't have a chance to reprise his role or whatever, which I am. Since I brought him up, like, where the hell is Will? We haven't seen him in a very long time, but I'm just curious. But getting back to her, like, the whole thing, Emma's, like, whole situation, her hands are a little shaky, and it's like, because in the beginning, we had Jiminy Cricket basically saying, like, okay, this is kind of an after effect of Emma letting her walls down. Emma's been fighting for a many years, fighting all these different bad guys here in Storybrooke and stuff like that. And for the longest time, obviously, she's had her walls up. But when it comes to her family, when it comes to Henry, when it comes to Hook, she's finally let those walls down. And yeah, it's a good thing. But with all those walls coming down, my understanding of it is that basically everything she's blocked away, like, during these fights, as well as everything she's ever fought against, when she had her walls up, all of it is kind of hitting her all at once. But it seems like, to a certain degree, it does seem like it might be that, but obviously it seems like it's something else. Like the fact is her hand won't stop shaking. Is that because it seems like that plays a role in why she dies in the vision, because she tries to use her magic, but she can't. And it's like, is it because of that, or is it because there's like something else? And what I also like is the fact of the matter is that Hyde kind of puts it in her head. It's like, oh, you can do what you do best, and that's help people. You as a savior want to help these people that are here from my land that I brought here. And it's like, but you do have to wonder what if helping someone here, these people I brought here, what if helping one of them? I mean, he said them, but he also said you never know. The person who does that to her, kills her, might already be here in Storybrooke. Let's note that one of the people that wasn't there during that whole situation was Regina. So it's something to keep in mind, because the persons that were there was Prince Charming, Snow White, Henry, and Hook. No Regina, so you would think during an important time like that, an important battle, Regina would be there. So I don't know, maybe that has something to do with Regina, or maybe it has nothing to do with her, but it's like, he's like, I don't know who it is, because it's not one specific person going after all saviors. Each savior has their own villain that will be the end of them. This particular person might be hers, but it's like, how do you know that the person you're helping out, what if you helping them out is what leads to your story ending? So it's kind of like, because that's never really come up before, because it's always been like, oh, there's obviously always been one savior, but now Emma learns there have been others before her. I mean, like I said earlier, we mentioned Aladdin was one, so it's like, maybe it's because of the different worlds and the different, them being from the Enchanted Forest. Maybe prior to Emma, there were no saviors in the Enchanted Forest. So maybe that's why no one really is like, oh, because no one's ever mentioned that to Emma before. Like, oh yeah, saviors, it never works out for them. So, but what I find most interesting about it is like, oh yeah, she's back to lying again, because she's not telling anybody anything. It's like, you went through all that trouble to put your walls out, and now you're shutting people out. And she's basically trying to handle it all on her own, which, as we know, like, always worked out for her in the past. I mean, especially last season, doing things on her own definitely worked then. So, you see, I mean, it's just, she made progress. She took a few steps forward, but now she's taking a few steps back. She's not letting anyone in. She's not even letting Hook know. And it's like, you screwed up last time trying to do everything on your own. It led to a huge ass problem. So it's kind of like, you would think she learned her lessons, but I guess that's part of Emma's character. Is the fact is that even when she lets those walls down, it's so much easier to kind of lift them back up. And I guess really after everything that's happened, after everything they've been through, they've already got to deal with Hyde as well as all these new people here in Storybrooke. Maybe she feels like she doesn't want to add more problems to it because it's like everyone's dealing with that. Last thing, because I think it's also because she is the savior. That was always the thing, like, oh, the savior needs saving. And it's like, no, she's like, I have to be the hero. I have to be the beacon of hope for this town. So it's like, if I have an issue, I need to solve it so that I can make sure everyone stays protected. The people in this town, as well as my friends and family. So, I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. Then another side of the story we had was Gold, which I loved his whole, like, thing. He met that dude named Morpheus. Now, Morpheus is the Sandman, right? Like, because that's how I'm interpreting it. Because, like, just because of the comic books, the Vertigo comic book series, which I've never read or anything, but it's just because I've heard the name. Isn't that one of the other names for Sandman is Morpheus? I mean, the obvious whole, like, oh, put sand over people's face. I mean, putting sand over someone and entering their dreams, obviously. So it's kind of like, okay, that's Sandman. But they kept using the other name Morpheus. So I guess they didn't want to be too like, oh, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, I'm Sandman, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I don't know. It just I thought that was kind of interesting. Like if I had not known that from a different source, I don't know if that really would have clicked in my head. I don't know. Maybe it is a completely different character, but from like I said, based on that comic book series, it makes me think like they're one and the same because that's just a different name Sandman goes by. But nonetheless, I love the whole thing of like, you know what? I'm a safe Belle. Enters her dream, meets Morpheus. He's like, okay, will you be able to wake her? You have an hour because if you don't within an hour, she's gonna be lost to the dream forever. Which at that moment, like I should have known something was. I was like. But other people have been under sleeping curses a lot longer than her and have been okay, right? Like, is there really like such a early like time limit like that? Like they're okay. I mean, I guess maybe because it was saying like, oh, the one she's under is very deadly or something. I just, when it's all said and done, I do believe that was just total bull. But he tried to win her heart back, basically trying to recreate the scenario. And basically, Morpheus is like, so you're going to lie to her. That would just be a lie. He's like, no, nevertheless, my love for her and our child will never be a lie. You can take that as fact. And he sways her a little bit, but then like when she kisses him, but it doesn't fully work. And she's like, wait a minute. Starts coming back to her. She's like, we've been through this before. Crap, you tried to trick me. And then Morpheus comes up and is like, oh yeah, hey. Yeah, I was, just all the tests because actually I'm your son. And they're like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah. When you spread the sin on Belle, you also got some on me. So I'm kind of like a dream version of your son. He's basically like, this whole thing was a test. You cannot, I want to see if you would be able to escape Rumpelstiltskin's lies. And she was able to see through them. And he's just like, don't let him back in your life. He will ruin this family just like he ruined his previous family. And so, I mean, it never came up, but let's not forget, he still hasn't paid for the fact is that he pushed Bellefire's mom into that river in the underworld. Because let's not also forget that she's also Hook's ex-lover. So if he found out about that, he'd be super pissed. But let's not forget he did that. So, but Belle was like, you know what? This is our child, but I need to stay away from you for the sake of our child. And now everything Gold's been trying to work hard for is kind of falling back and it's just slipping away from him. Because you always feel for Rumpelstiltskin. I mean, at the very least, you gotta give him props for no longer hiding. I mean, at least last season he didn't. He kind of came out open and was like, yeah, I love power. I love you and I love power. And I'm not going to give either one of you up. So he stopped hiding behind it. Now it seems like he's kind of retracting a little bit. I mean, mainly that was because he wanted to kind of convince her to come back. It's just like, oh yeah, you make me, I can be the best person that you want me to be. But it's like, no, she's giving you multiple opportunities and you've broke those promises time and time again. And it's just like, she can't keep letting you break her heart over and over again. So that was kind of interesting. And now, like I said, he's left alone. So it makes you wonder, what will he do? I mean, I'm sure he's going to be desperate to get Belle as well as their child back. But I mean, at the same time, it's kind of like, well, I mean, because he brought it up in his episode, like he lost Bellefire's trust. Like Bellefire ran away from him because he couldn't say no to the power, and he basically kind of destroyed their lives. So it's like, now he realizes like, oh man, I've lost another son, and now I've lost another woman that I love, and it's just, he's just in a lose-lose situation. So I'm very curious to see what he will do, because he will be desperate to get them back, and it makes you wonder what price. I mean, what is he going to do? I mean, because the whole point of finding out about this, like, you know, how to wake up Belle, a way of waking her up, was with the notion that he was going to get her and the baby back. But it's like, it fell through. So he literally signed Storybrooke over to hide for nothing. Because I mean, Grant, yes, Belle is awake, but the ultimate point was for her to be awake and be with him. But there's a side of him that's like, at least she's awake. But there's also the side of him that's like, she's awake, but she's not with me. I'll lose my child forever. This isn't, you know, obviously he's going to do his normal thing. He's going to scheme his way through this, but I'm very curious to see how. And then on the other side of things, in this episode, we also had the whole thing with Regina and Zelena, because it seemed like things were good. We even had Zelena staying in Regina's house with her baby Robin, but things kind of fell apart because it seemed like Regina was holding something back. It was like, oh yeah, I was missing like the feather that Robin's son had given to Zelena to give to Regina, but she lost it because, you know, just kind of moving in, everything scattered everywhere and everything. And then it's kind of like Regina makes it seem like she's upset about that, but then Snow's like, no, it's something more. Be upfront with her, tell Zelena, and they actually talk, but it ends up them kind of exploding at each other because Regina's like, I blame you. Every time I look at you, I think of Robin being dead because, you know, in her eyes, it's like your fault because your boyfriend did it. You didn't believe me about Hades and you stuck by his side and it led to him killing Robin. So it's like every time I look at you, I'm blaming you all over again. And then you have Zelena being like, but what about you? You went off and got rid of like the dark side of you, the evil queen part of you, and destroyed it without even talking to me. You talked to Snow White and not your own flesh and blood. I mean, it's funny because out of anyone, why Snow White? Because Snow White was like a daughter / sister to you, more so sister, but obviously they had that stepmother-stepdaughter relationship. But she was also like a sister to her, but it's like for the longest time you spent so much time hating her, but you know, after everything that's they've gone and been through, it's like, okay, we're, you know, closer now, and it's like, it's real. It's not me just pretending to get close to you so I can secretly kill you, but it's like you chose her, a woman that's not your flesh and blood, over me, your own flesh and blood. She's like, that evil side of you, it's one thing we had in common. Now that you've gotten rid of that, we don't have anything in common. Like, I'm alone again, essentially, because yes, we are sisters, but we were sisters in a similar situation, battling our own darkness, that we just want to be accepted and loved by someone. And I thought I had your love, but apparently I don't, because now we have nothing in common. There's nothing that kind of binds us together. It's like, we could have gone through this together, like you struggling with your darkness, like I struggled through mine, and I had never thought about that before, like how the thought of Regina destroying her darker half would obviously like make her feel. I mean, granted, we already knew her darker side wasn't dead, and it does make you wonder, what did the evil queen do with the dragon's heart when she took it last season? Because it didn't seem like she crushed it. It did seem like she kept it, and she's like, okay, let's get to work. So it's like, maybe she's keeping him in her back pocket, which we did see her pop up at the end of the episode, kind of trying to talk to Zelena. So curious to see, will this sway Zelena, because she's like, maybe in this part of her, she'll be like, okay, I have more in common with the evil queen than I do Regina. Now, it's all like, ever since I finished last season, I was like thinking back in my mind, okay, next season, I can already tell we're going to do some like swapping. Somehow she's going to whisk Regina away. I don't know why I was about to just call her simply Gina, but Regina away, and then she's going to take her place and be like, oh yeah, I'm pretending to be, oh sweet, good Regina. It does make you wonder, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, will Regina have to take her back in? Because at the end of the day, that pure darkness on its own is too chaotic to just, like, you know, it needs that other side of her. Like, that at the end of the day, that might be the most heroic thing she can do, is to keep that darkness within her. Because that's too much darkness that's developed over all these years to simply go away. That's too much hate and anger to disappear just like that. It's like, it won't be easy to kill. So I'm feeling like at the end of it all, maybe Regina will have to combine with her other half. I get the feeling, obviously, it's not going to be that simple. It might even be a situation where the darkness is so much that it ends up corroding the good side of her. And like I said, tying back into it, like, that might be who, like, Emma fights. Maybe it's evil Queen Regina, or maybe it's Regina after she welcomed the evil queen back into her heart, trying to, restore balance. It's like, as long as she has her good side, she can keep the evil queen in check. I mean, granted, she always has to struggle with the fact of doing what's right versus her natural instinct of doing what's evil. But at the same time, it's like, that is her battle. Like, it's, And she also brought up something else interesting in this episode, was the fact is that for the longest time, she got stuck. She stayed who she was because when it came to her story, she always let other people dictate who she was. It's like, oh, you are the evil queen. And that's always who she was. But she forgot that her story, there are multiple stories within her story. It wasn't just her as the evil queen. She was also Regina too. Like, before the whole situation with Snow and afterwards, she was always Regina too. But she let herself kind of get swayed by like the fact is, oh, people know me as the evil queen. And she let her story stop there. So she's like, no more. I'm going to start a new story. This time I'm walking into it with the belief that there will be, it will have a happy ending. Because also, we kind of got a discussion of like, Hades said the fact is that the crystal would end up destroying the soul of whoever it hits. So in Robin's case, it's like he was obliterated. There's no like underworld for him. It's just he disappeared. But Henry's like, no, I don't believe that. Hades was a villain, and villains say whatever they can to hurt you. And he knew that would hurt you the most. That he believes that Robin is in a better place. That when a story character's story ends, that there's kind of a sort of like almost kind of like a heaven afterlife for them, that they are at peace. I think it's a different kind of than the one like in the underworld where like Hook's brother went, as well as Cora, Regina, and Zelina's mom. That kind of afterlife, and then there's the other place that's like the worst place. So it's kind of like maybe there's a third place, or maybe this place and that place are same. That's something I am curious about too, like how that whole afterlife thing worked. And the way they made it almost seemed like some people's afterlife was kind of tailored to who they were. So it's kind of, I don't know. I am curious, like, will we see the underworld this season or not? Like, I mean, there's the whole thing about Cruella kind of running things down there. So I'm very curious to see, like, what kind of state the underworld is in now that she's kind of taken over. I mean, this whole situation with Emma dying, maybe that's where they'll end up. Maybe she'll end up down there. I mean, that begs the question, if there are other previous saviors that died, like, what happened to them? Did they go to the underworld or what? Because that never came up with Hades' whole situation. He never once mentioned other saviors down there. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm very curious to see where that all goes. And I'm also very curious to find out what other fairy tale stories are we going to get this season. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.